Hi, how y'all doing today? We're going to start a new segment that we're very excited about. It's just basically interviews, and that's going to go everywhere from interviews with investors like yourselves to some of our vendors and people that help us make transactions happen every day here in the Birmingham market. And hopefully you're going to gain insight into what's happening in this area. Today we have our very own Rob Drum, and we get to hear a little bit about his personal story and how he got into investing, a little bit about where the Birmingham market is currently and where we see rents potentially going. There's a lot of great stuff in here. We hope you enjoy. Check it out. Hey, how you doing, Rob? Good to see you.
I'm doing great, Todd. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, super excited to have you on. So everybody who doesn't know Rob, it was funny because I was thinking about doing this intro, and then I was like, well, we're gonna have a video interview of Rob Drum on Rob Drum's channel. So probably a little bit different interview than some of the other ones, but just thought we would have you on kind of more on the other side of the camera or the other side of the interview. Usually you're talking to other investors or sometimes vendors. And we just wanted to actually hear more of your personal story. A big part of what we do is obviously we call it skin in the game. And so all of us are investors, right? And so that's the kind of thing that we want to project to others, is that we are in this in Birmingham, locally in the market, and wanted to kind of take the time and just interview you about how you built your portfolio, where it kind of all started. And so I think we start there, is just kind of tell us how you got into the investment game, what kind of sparked that interest at first. So go ahead, man.
Yeah, I married into it. My wife owned a home when we got married, and I moved into that home. And then when we moved out of that home, we thought we had it sold. It was under contract, but so we moved out, and then the appraisal came in $30,000 below the agreed upon purchase price. So we were already living in an apartment while we were building a home. And instead of moving back in, we decided to rent the property. I was already interested in investing, thinking I was maybe going to take some of the money from selling that home to buy a investment property. So I realized, like, well, this is it. This is our investment property. And that was the first one that we started renting.
That's awesome. So you kind of fell into it. Talk me through a little bit about that initial, like when those first checks started coming in. Was it a little addicting? You're like, oh, this is actually working type of a thing?
It definitely was good. It was like, okay, we're paying the mortgage here and everything's working out smoothly so far. So it was definitely a little bit of a taste. Everything kind of worked exactly like I thought it would at first. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And from there, so you got your first rental under your belt, kind of stumbled into it, if you will. And then from there, it was like, remind me, you were a realtor at that point, right?
No, I wasn't. I was still trading stocks.
Okay. So you're still trading stocks. You got one rental. You're becoming a tycoon already. What was the next step for you?
Real estate wise, I would say in 2017. So that was end of 2015 when we turned that property into a rental. In 2017, I really kind of saw some writing on the wall from my previous business that it may be kind of coming to an end, not working out for what I needed, and started going to a couple of different meetups for real estate investors around Birmingham, and just trying to learn as much as I could about what is this real estate investing? How do I do it better? As just anything I could pick up, I was kind of soaking in for a good 6 months. And then during that time, I started working on getting my real estate license and got that in July of 2017.
Okay. Awesome. So I think I went through that process too. It was like this learning phase, and then there was like action step phase. And that's probably where you transition to like, okay, I'm going to actually get my license. I'm going to try this thing called real estate. Talk through that mindset of like, how you shifted from the learning phase where you're getting a lot of information, connecting with people, to being like, okay, I've got to not stop that. I don't want to say that, but turn into, now I've actually got to take action and do some of the scary stuff, and not stay in the analysis paralysis, if you will.
So what I did, and what I've seen with other successful agents, and I don't recommend this going into investing as itself. Going into being an agent, I think it's great, but going into investing, I would not recommend this. But I just kind of burned all the bridges, jump out of the airplane and find a parachute on the way down. And I had a second baby in 2 years. We had our first baby. I kind of saw the writing on the wall with work, and we were also pregnant at the same time. And so also in August of 2017, my son was born. Right after I got my license, we moved into a fixer-upper house that I was fixing up myself. And so the mindset of action was kind of just, I don't have a choice. Like, it's this or go get a job. And so I just kind of jumped for it. Didn't really have any kind of choice around take action or not. It was just, I have to. And I've seen that with some of the agents on my team have kind of just put themselves in a position where they have to take action.
Mm-hmm. So you still at this point only have one door in your portfolio, correct?
Yeah, I had,
okay. Great.
And I had bought a fixer upper. We moved from the house that we built to a real fixer upper.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. So you have a door, you've got 2 babies, you are starting a new career as a licensed agent, and talk me through what the kind of next steps were, the kind of next investment properties that came your way. What was the timeline on that?
The next one that I bought was in that same fall. I think it was in November that we closed. And it was a 2-1 in Hueytown. I was somebody that I found the house on for sale by owner on Zillow.
Okay. Very cool.
And yeah, and just went and met with her, kind of learned the story of the home. And I didn't comfortable paying the price that it was listed for. But when I kind of told the seller that, and it was kind of one of those emotional connection homes. There had been some trauma, and I told her that it wouldn't be really very close to what she was asking, but I did want to buy it, and I would send her an offer, and she gave me the keys before we left. She was like, "Here's the keys. Send me your offer." Wow. So I was kind of like, I guess she's going to accept this.
So you're in it.
Yeah.
Talk me through. So that's your second property. Did you cash finance that? Did you do that through a bank? How'd you finance it?
It was cash. So what I did, we had some savings. I would say about 2 years worth of living expenses saved up. When I got into, maybe a little more than that, when I got into real estate full time, which the more the better when it comes to getting started in this business. But that's the way that I paid cash for the fixer upper house that we bought.
Okay,
and
cool.
Then I fixed it up, refinanced that house, pulled money out, and most of that is what I used to buy the next house.
That's awesome. And did you fix that up and refi that one out too, or? Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Awesome. That's great, man. Yeah, it's cool because I've heard bits and pieces of your story. I've obviously followed you, through our connection and stuff, but I haven't heard, this specific detail. So it's kind of cool how, a lot of people who get with me, they ask me about real estate investing and stuff. It's just like, there's so many different ways you can make it work. And, for you to find a for sale by owner and, her go on a journey of realizing like, I need to sell this house, and you provided that solution. That's awesome. Cool. Well, I want to pivot. So that's kind of your early years. I think one of the things that you have done to kind of scale your acquisitions is you've kind of put a few portfolios. You bought whole portfolios, and so for those of you who may not know what a portfolio is, it typically is a set of houses that are either under a certain LLC or just seller is basically saying, I want to sell this as a group. And so you can't cherry pick them. You got to just kind of buy the whole package, evaluate the whole package as a whole. So Rob, talk me through a little bit about what it's the different shift as far as like what it's like to buy a portfolio versus like a single property, and kind of how you're thinking about it, how you're underwriting it, just kind of your thought process on those deals.
Well, I think there's a lot of benefits to buying them that way and really selling them that way. When you've got a number of different properties, different parcels that you're selling, it may be in different locations, sometimes different conditions that they're in. If you can find one buyer to buy it all in one fell swoop, there's a lot of time saved, a lot of headaches saved, a lot of good that comes from being able to do that. I would say from the buyer side, you get kind of instant scale to where, think back when I had that one property, we had some issues with that property where a tenant quit paying, left, and all of a sudden paying 2 mortgage payments. Whereas if you buy a portfolio that has, say, 10 houses, you've immediately, if one skips out on you, you've still got 9 others that are paying, and it can kind of pick up the slack.
Right.
And you can kind of evaluate it that way based on the total monthly rent coming in from multiple different tenants versus just one.
Well, and it comes back to, I think about it's like you had an individual conversation with someone in Hueytown to pick up one property. And it's not that that was bad. It was a good deal. Obviously, you do it again. But this is, potentially we'll say you find someone with a 5-door portfolio. That's one conversation to pick up 5 doors, one deal, one negotiation, and it's a really like a scalable. Now, on the flip side, when you do pick up a portfolio, talk me through a little bit of maybe some of the things to be aware of that you are gaining. So you're gaining some of the benefits of one negotiation and not having to pull all those 5 deals under. But what are some of the things that you got to be aware of? Like, okay, I'm trading a little bit for this, and there's some, I don't want to even say headaches, but some maybe bumps in the road you're going to have to work through.
Well, I would say, especially if you've part of the value that you're providing to a seller is that you're buying their whole portfolio. There may be some in that portfolio that you don't want, either right now, some that you may not want to hold long-term, and others that you do want to hold long-term. So you're probably getting one set of financing on the acquisition, and you may have to change that around later, depending on which ones you want to keep or sell. So there's some things with that as far as considerations on getting a home that might not be your favorite in that portfolio, but it is, sometimes it's negotiable, sometimes it's not. It just depends on the seller.
Talk me through. So you said basically if you get, we'll say, a portfolio loan, if you split out a property, the bank's going to are they going to even let you pull out one and renegotiate that? Or is that pretty much you have to sell it as a group again, basically?
It depends on the bank, how they handle. Some of them won't let you do, it's called a complete partial release of mortgage, where you could sell one property, but unless they redo the note, your payment is still the same on that loan. So, for example, I just sold, I had 5 properties that were the collateral for one loan, and they let me sell 3 of them, but my payment is still, and it, reduced my principal drastically, but my payment is still the same as if I had the 5 properties. I'm just paying a lot more principal. So
Yeah,
you just,
but they're still okay because you paid the principal down, so it's backed still by the two, and they only owe on the two. Okay.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
But my payment's still the same because we didn't redo the loan. So that's not a great situation because those two are not paying the whole loan that was paid
Right.
by the previous five.
Okay, gotcha. So you might be so now the new property you have may have to offset some of maybe what is negative gains on that portfolio sale.
Right. And I'll
Okay.
probably sell the other two, and that's how I'll solve that, or refinance them. But
Right.
the point is that that's something, if you're going to do a portfolio loan with a bank on multiple properties, you want to begin with the end in mind and know,
Yeah, that's good.
okay, if I want to sell one, what happens? How do you guys handle that? And that way you kind of know your options.
That's great. Okay, so fast forward to today. How kind of give me, just a rough picture of what you feel comfortable about sharing, doors, all that kind of stuff, how you run your business, kind of, we kind of did the history. What does it look like today for you?
Yeah, so I guess it looks very different from when I started. I use a professional. Well, I started with a professional property manager. I went to managing my own. And since I got to about 5 doors, I've been only with a professional property manager. We own around 50 doors here in Birmingham. And that's kind of, I say around 50 because I just sold some, I just bought some.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of in that continuing process for the rest of this year, probably, where I'll be selling and buying and kind of transitioning. And I would say it's a diversified basket of properties, some condos and townhomes, single family homes all over east, north, south, east, west of the city, and then some apartments that I just bought.
Right.
That I'm excited about. So
You're kind of in a different place of investing. And, when we have people who are on here and obviously at a high level, I kind of like to talk through, like, what are some of the, I guess, pivotal things in your life that have helped you get where you're at. So what are some of those like pivotal changing, shifting things that kind of have really defined, the process for you?
Marrying an incredible person.
That's always a good answer. She'll be watching this, right?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, if you ask what really the big, I think Warren Buffett says something like this too, but the really big defining decision of your life, and what sets you on a path, that's one of them.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And I have 4 kids now. And, so yeah, none of this would be happening without Amy's involvement. You're saying, what were the couple things that were?
Yeah, I mean, has there been, so like, I think about my life. When I sat down with a mentor, he's a guy in town that's a construction, just kind of, he actually started as a realtor, found that wasn't his cup of tea, moved into construction. And, one of the things he told me was like, he sat down and he was like, Todd, we're not at a lack of knowledge. Like today, in today's age, there is information everywhere. It's like we lack application. And it's probably one of the most pivotal pieces of advice that I've taken through. I think about it daily almost, of just basically like, it's not to say I don't still want to learn. It's not that I don't still read books or try to like gain some knowledge or watch the next, tutorial or YouTube video to try to understand this, another phase of this investment process. But at the end of the day, it's like, I already know quite a bit. I just need to consistently apply it. And so something like that you have found for your personal career, whether it be with real estate, being a realtor, or with investing, that's kind of been an ethos that has driven your progress when it's maybe not so fun and it's not so like easy, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I think what we're all pursuing in this real estate business, and I think this goes for entrepreneurs in general. And I tell you guys on my team this too, that the real value of doing well and investing, having enough money is good. And, it's always good to make more, be able to pay for things that you need. But the real value is in having control of your time. I think a lot of our clients that we talk to, when they get into wanting to invest in real estate and buy rental properties,
Yeah,
the underlying factor is that's what they're looking at. They may like their job, but they want to know that if something happened to their job, they've got some money coming in that allows them to, have some time to look for the best next job. Or maybe they hate their job and they want to get into, early retirement as soon as possible. But it really all comes down to time. And so I'd say time is something that I think about a lot. The value of time and what we're really doing here and doing with our time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it goes back to kind of like one of our principles is family. It's like, what's the point of freeing up all this time if you aren't taking care of the ones you love? So keeping that as a priority and using our time effectively for the things that matter, rather than, it's not just to make money for the sake of money. And I think that's also kind of how we see us helping our investors is really creating freedom for them to make their choices. So that's awesome. Going to, if we could switch gears a little bit, you obviously have, done the Birmingham market update. You have a good pulse on kind of where things go. If you were to give like an overarching synopsis, I know that's a hard question to ask, but if you were to give a synopsis of how COVID affected our Birmingham market, because obviously you look at New York to Florida, right? We have a lot of people moving from New York to Florida. So their story is different, right?
Mm-hmm.
What has Birmingham's story been during this kind of pandemic? And now we're kind of, I don't want to say coming out of it. Obviously, we're still dealing with it. But I think it's becoming a little bit more of okay, what does the new normal look like? So through that process, how did it affect our market, and what are we seeing now?
I think, and this is a little bit of a bigger picture look at real estate trends, but I think everything that was already happening got massively accelerated. Like everything that was already happening in the real estate market, where,
yeah.
Office space was starting to become less important of a, for businesses. There were more people wanting to work remotely. Amazon and delivery and grocery delivery was all like, things were kind of going that way. But now it's like people are doing it every single day.
Right. Yeah.
And so that massively changes the real estate supply and demand dynamics and that whole picture. And so Birmingham, I think people were already moving into the more affordable, they call them like Sunbelt cities, kind of in our southeastern region. People are already moving into these cities, and we've seen net in migration from out of state. Prices obviously went up drastically since COVID hit. Rents have gone up, and I think that's going to continue. And then I would say there's also, we're seeing, as far as capital from the big pools of capital, as we get deeper into a economic cycle, they move from primary markets, New York, San Francisco, they move into like secondary markets. I think Atlanta, maybe Nashville, and then Birmingham would be more of a tertiary market. And I think that rotation into tertiary markets from
Okay.
big pools of capital got accelerated. And so I think over the next year, we're going to see a lot more of that in markets like Birmingham.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. And what do you see, as far as happening in rent increases? Because obviously COVID hit, everybody was concerned about people just paying rent. Like, it's like, I'm as a landlord, I'm not increasing COVID, like no one was walking into their investor meetup being like, I'm raising rent 6%.
Yes.
Everybody was just glad to get it. Right. And
Yeah.
so we've kind of shifted gears. I was actually talking to an investor the other day. He had some back due stuff that the government went ahead and back paid him for people missed rents, because he did miss rents. And so everything's kind of getting caught up. What do you see rents now for the future, next 2-3 years? If you have that crystal ball on you, tell us.
Well, I would say that I think rental prices, they kind of take a little longer to go up. It's kind of lagging prices. Like you said, at first everyone's like, is anyone even going to pay rent? How are we, let
Right.
alone less rate? So I think it takes a little more time for all that $5 trillion that the government printed to work its way into rental prices. But it's been happening. And I think there's still a lot more room to run on that. So especially as we get, everyone comes back into employment and working and all that, we move farther and farther past the pandemic or out of the pandemic. I think that they'll continue really strong growth in rents.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I was thinking about the other day, it's like the housing market has seen its increase, and the rental market now will adjust to that, because you think about it, everyone who's potentially bought for an investment property, well, they bought at a higher price than they did 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So for the numbers to make sense, they've got to ask for a higher point. And, because they bought higher, taxes are higher now for them. The cost to maintain buildings is higher because, cost of supplies and labor has increased. And so all of these effective costs are probably, in my opinion, just hitting landlords, investors and stuff, this year. I mean, they probably were a little before, but definitely now it's like, okay, taxes just got hiked on me. I got to put on a new roof, and it's $1,000 more than I got an estimate a year ago. Well, then where's that money coming from? And ultimately it's got to come from, and hopefully the goal would be that, with all this money flooding the market, people are getting paid more. And so it all would go up, which I think we are seeing. People, as they shift jobs, are getting huge raises. So hopefully that'll help as well. Well, just wrapping up, I mean, I really appreciate your time. It's been super great. Tell me, I like to ask a few things. So this is a little bit vulnerable, but biggest failure that set you up maybe for success later. And it's almost like, what's your favorite failure, right? Because we're always learning, we're always growing. And the goal would be that we actually learn more from our failures than our successes, because they teach us with a little bit of a lesson, so talk me through maybe one of your favorite failures. If there is such a thing, right?
Let's see. Man, I think my brain just doesn't work that way. I really quickly reframe everything as positives. Not a lot that I'm like, oh, that was a failure, because I try to squeeze out the lessons from every bad thing that happens as quickly as possible, and then I kind of forget about it. Man, let's see. Like, I told you yesterday about something that you had going on. I was like, I know I had something similar to that happen to me. I can't think of what it was, but I know
Right.
it was bad. And there's things that in this, I'll just say this, in real estate in general, whether you're an agent or an investor, you're fully exposed to the market. You're fully exposed to the emotional lows and highs and full
Hmm.
spectrum of human conditions.
Yeah.
And there are things that will knock the breath out of you for a day, 2 days, 3 days. And what I see in the people that have been successful, what I would credit a huge part of my success to is being able to cut it off at 3 days or cut it off at a week, bounce back,
Yeah.
forget about it, move on, and get back with what you're doing.
Hmm.
There are days where you just feel like nothing is going right. Then there's days when you feel like everything is going right. And, it's kind of true sometimes, like literally some days, everything that could go against you does. And some days everything that can go your way does. And you have to learn to keep moving and move forward and take the positive out of that and keep your mindset right.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of have little failures all the time, but as long as you learn from them, stay in the game, nothing ends up looking like a failure down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember us talking about it. I lost some money on a deal through, my earnest money. And, but the net positive was it opened up other possibilities. It opened up other potential things that, kind of was an opportunity cost. And so what felt like a blow, and it still is a bummer, don't get me wrong. I made mistakes in that deal. I made mistakes in the way I wrote it. I wrote the contract. I made mistakes in the amount of earnest, all these kind of things, right? But it was like I can also learn from those mistakes, and then also B, from a business standpoint, you know, there's obviously a number, and that made sense for me to just move on from it. And that number was, was hard to swallow, but it still made sense. And we talked about that. And so I love what you said though there about take the 2 to 3 days, realize like it's not going to stink for that forever. And then decide, just kind of give yourself a time to say, okay, this is hard, but then give yourself a time to be like, okay, after this day, I'm going to make a choice and move on and keep on working and keep on doing the steps to invest. So, I think that's really good advice. Last thing I like to hear, because I think books and reading and knowledge and all that is so influential, and helps us grow. If you were to gift a book or top 2 books that you just kind of have impacted you recently, kind of throw those at us so that we can all kind of stay learning.
So I'm kind of in a reading spiral right now. I'm doing a lot of reading, so I could point to a lot of books. I will say, Never Split the Difference has
Yeah,
been a really impactful one. I read that early in my career, and that will help you. Honestly, no matter what you're doing for work, if you're married, it'll help you. It just helps in every situation. So that's a great book to read multiple times and internalize. Um, I would say, man, Who Not How is one that I just read that uh, it's a newer one. I think it just came out in the last year, and it's a great quick read. Kind of turned me on to Dan Sullivan, which I'd never read any of or heard much about him and his thoughts on entrepreneurship. So that was a really good one. And then let's see, trying to think of something that I read like a long time ago. I recently reread Rich Dad Poor Dad.
oh yeah,
And
the classic, right?
yeah, I mean, everyone mentions that one. And so I would say that is a good one to kind of like, my mentor calls it wonderfully disturbed. So
Yeah, I'd
it
agree.
was going to stir some things up and make you think and really open your mind to the way things can be. And so that one's one that, just for the kind of the mindset aspect of letting you see what's out there, that's a great one.
Yeah, I love that one too. I think it is such a great first read for someone who maybe didn't grow up with an investor mindset, or have, an uncle, or, a dad or a mom or someone who in their lives who said, this is how to invest, this is how to make passive income. It's such a great way of like, this is an overview of how markets work. This is an overview of how life simple, works. I even tell my son, I'm trying to instill in him the basics, and we talk about literally just the simple, what's an asset and what's a liability. And I'll point at a house and I'll say, all right, this is our house. What is it? And it's a liability, which I thought it was an asset for the longest time. When at the end of the day, it doesn't make me money, in the immediate. And so he's like, that's a liability. And I'm like, that right. But I'm like, look at our rental property. We're over there. And he's like, that's an asset. And I'm like, great job. So but it's that whole thing of, if you didn't have that as a kid, or even later in life as a young adult, it's such a great read that helps you kind of start this journey of understanding the overall idea of why we invest and why we put our time and effort into what feels like a lot of work for a little bit of income turns into this big, over time, turns into a big snowball of, freedom basically for us. So, Rob, I want to thank you. I always say time is the most valuable thing we have. And I really appreciate your time investing in, through your channel that we are on right now, investing in others, keeping them up to date with the Birmingham market, helping investors buy and sell in Birmingham. If you all could just like and subscribe, if you like this content, if it's helpful for you guys, go ahead and like and subscribe, connect with us. We're going to be trying to do more of this, connect you with some of our vendors, connect you with other investors. So anyway, Rob, really, again, appreciate your time, and we'll catch you soon.
Thanks for doing this, Todd. Appreciate it.
All right. Take it easy, man.